Hi, this is a short tutorial to show you how to sharpen, give the appearance of extra sharpness when your photo is just a little bit soft. Here you can see beautiful expression. There's lots of nice detail. It just doesn't have a super crisp look to it. So first of all, we're going to keep this as a before layer. We're going to duplicate it. Command J will make us a copy of that, and Control J on a PC. So we'll just use the move tool, drag it over. So this is the one we're going to work on. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to actually make a copy of these after. We're going to leave this after so that we notice the difference. The easiest way to make a copy is click and drag it down, and now you can see we have an exact same copy and it's overlined with the previous one. We're going to go Filter, Other, High Pass. Now if you've never used the high pass filter before, take a moment to kind of go up and down and see what it looks like. Here on 0 it looks like just a blank sheet of gray. If you move it all the way up to 1000, it looks like it's just going to be a stylized, washed out version of the original. For this effect, you're going to want it to be somewhere closer to, let's just say the 2 to maybe as high as maybe like 15, somewhere in there. Usually a little bit lower is better than higher. So here you can see the edges look all kind of embossed almost, and that's what we're going to use to help make it look like it has a more of a sharp look. Under the next thing we do is change the blending mode, and we're going to change it to either soft light or overlay. Sometimes one will work better than the other, and if you just kind of go back and forth, you can see. I like soft light just a little better. Now if you can, we'll zoom in a little bit here so you can see the before and after. Now one of the things that is really nice about this technique is that you can apply it selectively. So if you decide that all of the rest of the dress or some of this hair, you don't really need that, you can apply a layer mask. Now if you hold your mouse button over this, it should pop up with the little add layer mask. Now there's two ways to do it. You can either click on that and that's going to give you a white layer mask which automatically will show everything. If you hold down the Alt key and do it, then it's going to be a black one which is going to hide everything. So if you do that route and say we just want to do the eyes, we're going to use a brush tool and we're going to use a low opacity and low flow, and I usually like to keep these right around 20 for both of them. Usually you want to zoom in at 100%, but this is a low res screen grab, so we're just going to leave it like that. And painting with a white brush against the black layer mask, we're going to paint in the effect just where we want it, which is of course the eyes. If you're going to have one part of a portrait in focus, it really ought to be the eyes. So it's kind of hard to see, I'm sure, on a lower resolution that you're going to be looking at this, but the layer mask is starting to show little areas of white. Now if you want to see that in a graphic representation or overlay, if you hold down the Alt key while you click on it, it'll change everything black, and then you can just see the little black and white. So if you wanted, you could edit this just a little bit, paint it here. For the most part, the reason you would use this is if you're trying to paint out everything, and let's say we had big, for the sake of argument, something like this where you didn't quite get everything, this would be an easy way to go back and paint it where you don't want it. Of course, we don't want any of that, so I'm going to step back in my history a couple to get rid of it. The way that you make this view go away is click on the pixel layer. So you can see now that it's just the eyes that look a little bit sharper. Maybe we're going to add just a little bit here into the hair as well. Not too much. And a little bit here in the eyes. Now I'm sure you can hear my clicking. The keyboard shortcut for making your mouse a little bit bigger and a little bit smaller is the square brackets. We're going to call that good. So now, assuming you've done everything, you save this as a master file, The next thing that I want to do would be resize it for your print copy. So we're going to pretend I've already done that because this is already a decent size. And I'm going to make a customized sharpen edges thing. So if you look under filter and you look under sharpen, you can see there actually is a sharpen edge tool. And you know, frankly, it works pretty well, but it's never been my favorite for the fact that it's not even a little bit customizable. You can see, just because it's the most recently used one that's up here, what you can't see is how it actually changed anything other than, you know, the before and after look. So I don't like to use sharpen edges, but I like the idea of sharpening just the edges. If you sharpen everything, you're going to introduce some noise. You're going to maybe sharpen things that you don't really want sharp. And so the way I achieve that same look is, first I'm going to select these two layers here, because I don't like to ever edit my pixel layer directly, and because I want these two layers combined in order to have the effect I want. So I'm going to make a copy of them by dragging them both down when they're active. And in order to do two layers at once, click on the first one, shift click on the second. Now Control or Command D, if you're using a Mac or a PC, will flatten those two layers. Anything that is, if you use Control E when you only have one layer selected, it'll flatten it with the layer below it. If you have more than one layer selected, it'll flatten the layers that are selected. So I've done that here. I've turned off the other two versions. This is a way that if I make a mistake, I can always go back very easily and use just what I want. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the channels layer palette, and we are going to double click. I'm sorry, we're not going to double click. We're going to Command or Control click on the RGB layer, and you can see that's made a layer, obviously. And what we're selecting here is the luminosity data. And so now if we click on make a new layer, I'm sorry, it's the same looking icon, but when you're in the channel mode, it's make a alpha channel. Click on that, and if we click just there, you can see we're going to deselect, Control D. You can see that basically what we've made is a grayscale image. That's where we're going to start, and actually I'm not going to include this one because I want this to have a nice clear before and after. So I'm going to use the rectangle tool. Select that and just hit delete, and then I'm going to do Control I, and that's going to invert it so that it's just white. And the black would have been okay, but might as well make it all nice and neat. So now we just have the after side done. What we're going to do is filter, stylize, find edges, and basically it makes it like a pencil drawing. Now there's a couple things. Now you can see there's some like wavy stuff here in the skin. We don't really want that, and I personally, it can be either this way. I find it's a little bit easier to do it as a reversed image. So again, Control I inverts everything. And what we don't want is to be sharpening areas of skin, because that's going to introduce basically digital noise. So we're going to modify this with levels. So Control or Command L will pull up the levels dialog box. Now, unlike when you're in the layers mode, you can't do levels or curves as a adjustment layer. You just have to do the alpha channel, change it directly. Now you could change the white point or the black point, but what I find is most effective usually is just to change the midpoint. Now if you go to the left, you can see it brightens everything up. What we really want to do is go to the right, darken things, because all we really want to sharpen are the areas around the face. It's going to define the arms. Certainly around the eyes are going to be an important one. So it depends on the image as to how much you're going to want to do this. Somewhere, it's actually an unusual image that you would do as much as 0.5. Anyways, we're pretty good there. We're going to say OK. The next step is filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and we're going to add about a 1 to 1.5 pixel radius. Now this is a way to feather the effect, so you can see on and off how that looks. We're going to say OK, and finally the last thing here is this white line here is just an artifact from where we copied the original image. So we're going to get rid of that. Just hit delete, deselect, and now this is what we're going to use as our selection guide in order to sharpen the image. So once you have this created, click on the RGB channel, and that's going to be all of the colors again. Hold down Control or Command and click on the alpha 1, and you can see we've activated our layer, and you can see the little marching ants. Make sure you have it the layer selected that you want to sharpen, and we do that. So the next thing we're going to do is easier to sharpen without seeing all the little marching ants, because that kind of hides the effect that we're looking for. Control D is going to deselect them. You don't want that, but Control H is just going to hide them. So Control H on and off will toggle the selection, and turn it off. We're going to do Filter, Sharpen, and Unsharp Mask. Now for a low res image, having values like 250, 1.2, and 11, the threshold here is really not going to give you any sort of relevant change whenever you're just sharpening the edges. So I usually keep it relatively high. If there's something I missed when I was making my layer, this will help to make sure that you're not sharpening areas you don't want. If I was sharpening the whole image for a low res version like this, I'd probably use like maybe 125 and maybe like 0.4. But because we're only sharpening the edges and because we want it to be pronounced, you can go with a relatively high. So if you click preview on and off, you can see that there's a little bit of a sharpening effect. Definitely look right here in the little catch light, and you can see it. Click OK, and that's it. So the next step here would be either to save it for the web if you're uploading it, or sending it to your printer. Let me know if you have any questions, and these are a couple of really great tips and tricks to know. You're not going to want to use, hopefully you're not going to want to use the high filter pass very frequently, but because hopefully you're getting your exposures exact and your focus just exactly where you need it. But if you have an image that's close and you just want to bring out a little bit of detail, this is a great technique to use. Let me know if you have any questions, and look forward to seeing your images soon.